That looks like a trail of tear gas there being fired in the foreground. There comes another one coming down as well. This is extraordinary. This is the capital of Egypt on a Friday afternoon.
You can see more tear gas being fired at the protesters, and more of them are coming our way. Yeah, sorry, Kamal, it's just where more tear gas canisters are being fired direction of our building, actually towards the protesters, and you can see.
Take your time.
Just 1 second, stay with us, come on. تعال أحمد بدل. تعال.
Is worsening here by the moment. I'm seeing, in fact, in front of me, a bloody body being carried through the streets, a march, and following it, people chanting, "There's no God but God." The martyr is loved by God.
By 6 p.m., the state strategy on the ground was changing.
Fighting is actually happening right in front of our office. What you're seeing there are the riot police making their way towards the bridge. We never expected it to escalate the way it did, because it seemed that the protesters were determined to push the police and the riot police really further and further down the road. But every time they would fire tear gas canisters, they would call reinforcements, and they would try to push the protesters away off of the bridge. Kamal, unbelievable pictures you're seeing there of crowds of protesters trying to dump the vehicle that is a personnel carrier that carries troops of the police. They're trying almost to knock it over the side of the bridge into the Nile. Yes, into the Nile.
Those police armored vehicles were notorious because they were what would carry political prisoners. They were what were used to try and suppress the people. Just their mere presence on the street would strike fear in the ordinary Egyptian.
The dynamic in Egypt is such that the Ministry of Interior and all of its police forces and various security apparatuses are widely despised in Egypt because they're widely considered as corrupt. They're seen as abusive. There's always allegations of human rights abuse against them. They're notoriously known for torturing prisoners, and they've always been, at the end of the day, seen as an institution that protects the regime, not protects the people. So indeed, it was a complete game changer once the military had entered into the streets of Cairo. Everywhere you go, the soldiers are still very much admired, still very much respected. The military is still very much revered.
What was uncertain was if the army would take a side and which one.
I have asked the government to resign, and I will appoint a new one starting tomorrow.
Well, I think the impact of that message was it was widely seen as a little too late. He almost failed to realize that the anger and the protesters had one goal in mind, and that was him. They weren't upset about policies, they weren't upset about ministerial postings, they weren't upset about declarations, they were really upset about the president. They feel that the president had usurped his powers, had driven Egypt into the wrong direction for nearly 30 years, and had eroded the dignity of life that they want.
Where I actually am is 24 floors above the NDP headquarters in a building not far from our bureau, but to try and get more of an idea of what is going on out there. Now, at the moment, the NDP headquarters is impossible to make out the shape of even the building. There is so much black smoke pouring out from it.
Probably the most iconic moment for me, seeing the National Democratic Party headquarters go up in flames and seeing it burnt out and no one coming to its rescue. No one even bothered to try and put it out.
A scene until now unimaginable. The symbolic seat of Hosni Mubarak's 30-year power ablaze.
The headquarters of President Hosni Mubarak's ruling NDP party are still ablaze on Saturday morning. You can see the smoke and still some flames coming from the higher windows. Every vehicle in sight here has been set alight by protesters.
We saw the scope of the damage, and we saw that the city skyline of Cairo had changed.
By Saturday, tensions at the protests themselves had actually eased. Around 50,000 people, surprisingly undeterred by what had so far taken place, filled Tahrir Square, still hoping for their calls to be met, for Mubarak to resign from office.
The atmosphere is one of great celebration and one also of great defiance.
Certainly quite a significant political development in just the last 10 minutes. Omar Suleiman, who's already being described as one of the world's most powerful spy chiefs, now vice president of Egypt.
Rather than conceding, Mubarak was installing a new government, consolidating his power. News of this attracted fresh solidarity for the protesters from outside the country.
Well, I'm standing in front of the Egyptian embassy in Washington, where people are chanting, "Down with Mubarak and down with Suleiman."
The people are crying out with demands. Hear them, hear them.
Yet official reaction from Egypt's biggest ally, the United States, was muted.
These are images President Hosni Mubarak will not want Egyptians to see.
We just got some frantic phone calls from eyewitnesses in various suburbs of downtown Cairo saying that they have seen some thugs that they say belong to the regime out and about on motorcycles trying to loot some of the stores there in the absence of any police presence.
Gamal Mubarak's political career ended on January 25th, 2011.
Yesterday should be the last day of the legitimacy of the regime.
By evening, the composure of Saturday morning had turned to chaos and grief. Still, the Egypt seen by viewers watching state TV was an entirely different one. A sanitized view, not one of a country immersed in revolution. Anarchy appears to overwhelm streets from which police had now vanished.
We knew that the Egyptian government, which always watches AlJazeera very closely, had begun to crack down on the network because it had by then already disconnected the AlJazeera Arabic signal and tried to disrupt the service.
Let me